The night was silent, except for the wind rustling the reeds. In the shallow water stood the stone platform, surrounded by human skulls. Through the darkness, the village waited. Soon another would join them. By dawn, the man knelt, his head bowed. From behind, the village watched in silence. He was trembling. His breath was short. His eyes met theirs one last time. Then, he surrendered to fate. The wind carried his final breath beyond the firelight, lost to time. Thousands of years later, when archaeologists found his skull impaled on a stake, they called it a ritual. But they never knew the truth. They never knew who he had once been. His story takes us to the very beginning, back to the Ice Age and the first people of Sweden. More than 10,000 years after the Ice Age began to retreat, the first humans arrived in what is now Sweden. These hunter-gatherers migrated from Central Europe and the East, adapting to a shifting environment. At Motala, archaeologists discovered human skulls mounted on wooden stakes, placed on a submerged stone platform. Among them was the skull of a man in his 50s, later named Ludwig. A forensic reconstruction showed he had blue eyes, sharp features, and brown hair, but his true identity remains unknown. The site was unlike anything seen before. The skulls were missing jawbones, and animal remains, boars, deer, and bears, were placed beside them. This suggests a structured ritual, possibly tied to ancestor veneration, or a belief system that remains unclear. Genetic studies revealed that those buried here carried a mix of Western hunter-gatherer and Eastern hunter-gatherer ancestry. The paternal haplogroup I2 was widespread among Western hunter-gatherers populations across Europe, particularly in Scandinavia and the Balkans. The maternal haplogroups U4 and U5, common among both Western hunter-gatherers and Eastern hunter-gatherers, linked these individuals to hunter-gatherer groups from across the continent. Scandinavia was already a meeting ground of different populations, shaped by migration and interaction. Modern Swedes carry approximately 10 to 20% of their genetic ancestry from Scandinavian Mesolithic hunter-gatherers, including the Motala people. However, the majority of their ancestry comes from later migrations. Around 4000 BC, a major shift reshaped Europe. Neolithic farmers, descending from early Anatolian populations, migrated into Scandinavia. Rather than replacing the indigenous hunter-gatherers, they mixed with them, introducing agriculture, new technologies, and their genetic legacy. Although early farmers are often compared to modern Sardinians, their appearance was likely more varied. The genes for very light skin spread later, influenced by subsequent migrations. These early populations probably had intermediate skin tones with diverse hair and eye colors. Paternally, haplogroup G2A marks their presence, while maternal lineages like H, K, J, and T remain widespread in Europe today. Studies suggest that modern Swedes inherit roughly 20 to 25% of their ancestry from these early farmers. Around 2000 BC, a new wave of migration reshaped Europe. Groups from the Pontic-Caspian steppe moved westward, leaving a lasting mark on both genetics and culture. In Scandinavia, this movement gave rise to the corded ware culture. But these people weren't pure steppe nomads. They were a mix, about 75% Yamnaya-like steppe ancestry blended with European Neolithic heritage. This migration didn't just change the culture, it transformed the genetic landscape. Paternally, haplogroups like R1a, and to a lesser extent I1, became dominant. In Western Europe, R1b was more common, especially with the Funnelbeaker culture, but in Sweden it was less prevalent. These migrations likely played a key role in spreading Proto-Germanic languages, which later evolved into Old Norse, shaping much of Northern Europe. But the changes weren't just linguistic, they were physical and technological. Steppe groups were noticeably taller than early European farmers, likely due to both genetics and a protein-rich diet. Their more robust build, combined with their mobility, may have given them an advantage over local populations. One of their most significant contributions was horse domestication. Horses revolutionized travel, warfare and trade, allowing these migrants to spread rapidly across Europe. They also introduced traits that became defining features of modern Scandinavians. Lighter skin tones, fair hair, and blue or green eyes became more widespread over generations. The genetic influence of these migrants remains strong today. Modern Swedes derive roughly 45 to 50% of their ancestry from the steppe. Maternal lineages like H, J, U, 2, and T reflect this deep fusion of steppe and Neolithic ancestry. This period set the foundation for Sweden's transition into the Bronze Age, a time of expanding trade, advancing technology, and growing cultural complexity. By the late 8th century, Sweden was entering the Viking Age. This period is known for exploration, trade, and seafaring warriors who ventured across vast distances. Swedish Vikings, called the Varangians in the east, established connections with many cultures, particularly in Slavic regions. They played key roles in trade and governance in cities like Novgorod and Kiev. The Vikings were not a single, homogeneous people. Genetic studies of Viking-era remains reveal surprising diversity. Many carried the paternal haplogroup I1, strongly linked to Scandinavians, but their DNA also includes Finnish, Baltic, and British Isles ancestry, evidence of migration, trade, and at times enslavement. A 2023 study identified a significant influx of British-Irish ancestry into Sweden during the Viking Age, particularly in the south. This migration was largely female-biased, likely driven by Viking raids, settlement, enslavement, and intermarriage. Germanic influences also shaped Swedish DNA. Genetic studies show that modern Swedes share close ties with Northern Germans due to historical migrations and trade. Swedish Vikings, particularly those involved in trade and settlement, maintained continuous contact with Northern Germanic groups, reinforcing cultural and genetic exchanges. The Viking legacy is not just found in history books, it lives on in modern Swedes. Genetic studies show that many Swedes today still carry Viking Age markers. As Sweden entered the medieval period, Christianity, political consolidation, and growing trade networks reshaped its cultural and social landscape. The genetic structure of the population continued to evolve, influenced by migrations, intermarriage, and shifting alliances with neighboring regions. One of the most distinct communities in Scandinavia is the Sámi. While often associated with reindeer herding today, their ancestors were primarily hunter-gatherers and fishers for much of their early history. Their genetic heritage reflects deep connections with Uralic-speaking populations, particularly through the paternal haplogroup N1C, which links them to ancient Siberian migrations. However, their DNA also carries traces of early Scandinavian and European hunter-gatherers, highlighting centuries of interaction with neighboring groups. During the medieval period, Swedish expansion into the north led to increasing contact between the Sámi and the growing Swedish kingdom. At the same time, Sweden experienced other genetic shifts. The 16th and 17th centuries saw significant Finnish migration, particularly the arrival of the forest Finns, who settled in rural parts of central Sweden. These migrants contributed to the genetic diversity of the region, and traces of their lineage remain detectable in certain areas today. Sweden's genetic diversity reflects centuries of migration, isolation, and adaptation. While many Swedes share paternal markers like I1 and R1A, regional differences reveal a more complex ancestry. Northern Sweden has higher Uralic and Sámi ancestry due to historical interactions and geographic isolation. Southern Sweden shares closer genetic ties with Germany, Denmark, and Britain, shaped by trade and migration. Central Sweden blends influences from both the north and south, acting as a genetic bridge. A study published in the European Journal of Human Genetics found that 4 major haplogroups account for 80% of Swedish male lineages. I1A, at 37%, is the most common haplogroup in Sweden, strongly linked to Viking ancestry and widespread across Scandinavia. R1b3, making up 24%, is common in Western Europe and tied to early Indo-European migrations. R1a1 at 12% has strong connections to Eastern and Central Europe, particularly steppe migrations. N1C, found in 10% of the population, is most prevalent in northern Sweden and is closely linked to Sámi and Finnish ancestry. Regional differences were evident. Västerbotten, in north, has the highest levels of N1C and I1C, making it genetically distinct. Skaraborg and Östergötland, in south, have higher levels of R1b3, aligning them with Western and Central Europe. Dalarna and Värmland, in central Sweden, show Finnish and Norwegian influences, shaped by forest Finn migration in the 16th to 17th centuries. Sweden's genetic structure remains distinct between north and south, but modern migration is reshaping it. Finnish labor migration in the 20th century and global immigration have introduced new genetic diversity. Sweden's DNA reflects migration, adaptation, and change, a history still unfolding today. From the silent shores of Mesolithic Sweden to the Viking Age, migration shaped this land. Hunter-gatherers, farmers, and warriors left their mark on modern Swedes. Their names, like those whose skulls were found on stakes, are lost, but the winds still whisper them over the reeds, carrying their legacy through time. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this journey, feel free to like, comment, and share. We'd love to have you join us for more stories of our ancient past.